Great. Awesome. Thank you very much for coming on, Tej. So thank you everybody for coming back onto this podcast. Today, I've got someone who didn't wait for any permission to build a business. He started his first business at 16, ran it straight out of his dorm room at McMaster. He came back to Hamilton and he built Merit, brewing it from the ground up into one of the most recognized brands in the city. Then he exited as the CEO in 2025 after nearly a decade. He's now back at the group as an inaugural entrepreneur in residence, and which just becomes an entire full circle moment. Thank you very much for coming on, Tej. Welcome in.
Hey, thanks so much, man. Really happy to be chatting, and really glad that you're doing this.
Awesome. Thank you very much for even taking time out of your day. Let's get right into it. Okay. People always say failure is the best teacher, but nobody actually talks about what it feels like to fail. The sleepless nights, the doubts, the did I make the right choice moments. That's exactly what we're going to be going into today. So I want to ask you the first question. You started your first business at 16, no guidance, no blueprint. What was that actually like? Like, were you scared of anything or were you just saying, you know what, screw it, I'm going to just go for it?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and maybe to skip ahead a little bit. Failure feels really different the first time it happens than it happens then it feels the hundredth time. Um, you know, that being said, when I was 16, I still didn't necessarily have a big fear of failure, a big fear of, the uncertainty that often comes with entrepreneurship. I also didn't have necessarily grandiose or kind of a mythical picture of what entrepreneurship was as well. I felt really grounded about the purpose that entrepreneurship could have. I felt really grounded about how I could use the skill sets that I had to be entrepreneurial. And so much of that, I mean, almost all of it really, came from seeing my grandparents, be entrepreneurs. My grandparents, had the opportunity to come to Canada very early on. They were one of the first people from our village to come to the country, and my grandfather specifically used his skill sets. He was great at communicating and great at creating relationships. And he was really good at selling things to build their business, which was Merit Furniture. And they spent their life building this furniture business. um, I didn't understand this when I was a high schooler or a kid, but they really had this like deep kind of purpose behind their business as well. And so what I saw on the surface as, entrepreneurship as, a family using their skill sets to, provide for their family, just became the very, simple reality of what work looks like. And I think having that example, gave high school me the confidence to just go and do it, to not live with uncertainty about what entrepreneurship looked like, to not also live with like an unfair or outsized expectation of what entrepreneurship was. It was, hey, I want to go make money. I want to use this. I'm going to use a skill set that I have to go and achieve that goal. And that's as simple as my goal was at the time. There wasn't a big picture, there wasn't a big vision. It was, hey, I want to start making money, and I had the skill set that I think I can use to go after that. And whatever came from there, whether it was failure or success, was kind of what I understood as kind of the entrance fee for playing the game, of entrepreneurship. I kind of knew I'd have to accept whatever came my way. And even though, I had, my grandparents as models for entrepreneurship, it didn't necessarily mean I had a roadmap that told me exactly what to do when I needed to do it. But I think more than anything, it just gave me the confidence to approach whatever came on that, map ahead of me, with, critical thinking, with, confidence, and with the ability to kind of persevere as well.
But why not go the traditional route? Get a degree, whether that may be in finance, accounting, and then go into a corporate job where it's a lot more stable. What made you want to take that risk though? Was it once again the role model from your grandparents, or is it just something where you're just like, I don't really feel like working a normal corporate job. I want to do something of my own.
I think that's part of it. I think you get a little bit of a taste of that at a young age, and you get this immediate like reward and validation around like your work producing something, right? And there being impact and success tied to your work. And I think that's almost a little bit of an addictive feeling that you want to
Hmm.
chase. Um and so I think for myself, like I went to university and I went to go get a degree. And I don't know if in the back of my mind it was like, okay, good, I'll have this degree to fall back on. I really did approach my time at DeGru, getting my commerce degree, as a way to build skills that would further my entrepreneurial ambitions. um, but I also at degree as well. Um, but more than anything, I just wanted to continue to see if and prove to myself that I could keep having those little moments of success. And we were pretty lucky. We got some big successes right off the hop, and that became validation that, hey, I think even though I'm 17, 18 years old, and I might be young, I might always be the youngest person in the room. We might not have the most experience, but we're doing something right, and that's that was really helpful back.
Hmm. I mean, I honestly, I could kind of relate to this because my dad, he has his own business. So it's kind of like thinking, do I really want to stay in this one job forever where you might be miserable, but actually kind of take that risk? I think I kind of have that same mindset where I'm just like, at the end, I want to have something of my own where I could actually be proud of and actually like, go tell my kids one day, like, yeah, I actually took that risk rather than, just staying there. Right. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the corporate job or anything like that, but
Mhm.
it's just something about taking a risk, you know?
For sure. And I think that's part of like a larger generational shift that, from my parents to me, to your parents, to you, even though we're different ages, there is a bit of a shift in how people are approaching work. My parents' generation, so many of them spent 30 years, working
Hmm.
at a job. And that's an incredible amount of dedication that it takes to do that. It's an incredible feat to stay somewhere for 30 years and
Yeah.
contribute to an organization for 30 years. That is amazing. I think, younger generations, mine, and then onto yours as well, I think having a diversity of experiences and understanding that, change is okay. And I think that might have been part of kind of the older generations, um, you know, factoring is the stability, right? Um, let's be honest, not that much is stable right now.
Yeah.
Not much has been stable for the last 15 years. I
Hmm.
graduated in 2010, just after the 2008 financial crisis.
Hmm.
Not that much was stable back then either.
Yeah.
And so understanding that, hey, you might have four, five, six, seven employers over the course of what your parents had, one or two. That going in with that understanding and realization that that's how it just might work out. Also, that's how it might actually be beneficial, to you, to develop different skills, to develop different perspectives, to see different things. I think that's something that it is definitely more common now, and I think that can be really beneficial.
Yeah. 100%. And I've even like said this to my other friends where failure teaches you a lot more than successes. It, you know, like the successes, it taught you that, okay, you did a good job, right? But what did you learn from it, right? You didn't really learn much from it. I take failures more so as winners, all right?
Mhm.
I don't ever take it as, okay, I lost, I'm a failure. I didn't know what I was doing. I tried to do it. I may have not gotten the right thing or I may have not won, but I learned something from it. What can I do differently next time? Right? And I feel like that kind of like affects a lot of people where they just can't handle it. They can't handle that failure or they can't handle that, yo, this person is telling me that I'm wrong. right? And for the people out there that may struggle with this, how would you tell them to how could they deal with it, right? How could they deal with taking that criticism from another person rather than taking it personally, take it as a learning experience?
Yeah. And when we, have a failure, it's really easy to say, well, the market wasn't right. Other factors that I'm not in control of, were the things that caused this. I think one experience that I've certainly had more and more, especially as I've, gotten older and had more experiences, is that for there to be people who, actually bring it back to like, actually, no, this wasn't just external factors. This was a decision that you made, but let's work through it. Let's talk about it. Let's, think about how, you might move differently next time, on the positives and the negatives. I think that's, always an important thing to have. Peers are incredible. And honestly, one of the most, um, you know, amazing resources that you have as a student at the university is your peers, and it's being able to surround yourself with people who think, like you do. I'm glad you have that mindset. That's really incredible. um, I think, outside of your peers, kind of telling you that, hey, this is information. It's okay, to be there, for you. I think, there is a certain amount of resiliency that you have to build up within yourself. I think confidence in yourself, is really important. People build up confidence and competence, in different ways, but I think, being for me, how I've done that is to be methodical, is to be prepared, is to be, informed, as I said earlier, so that, when something positive or negative happens, I know that I've done at least my part, right? I have done my due diligence, and if that didn't work out to, bring the right decision, forward, then hey, that means that I've got, a new way to approach that due diligence next time, really.
That's true. I mean, it's always about finding how to build that resilience. And I feel like that just comes through time. When you were growing up, did you always have confidence or did you always have kind of that, salesman mindset? Were you always this type of person that you are now?
Yeah, yeah, I don't think that really changed. It's certainly grown. I've always loved talking to people. I've always loved talking to different people. As well. I was one of those kids in high school that had like, the five friend groups that
Yeah.
would always pop around. Like, I was on sports teams, but then I was also involved in student government. And then I went to the, jazz band and hung out with the, music nerds. Like, it was. You know, I always liked surrounding myself with people because I thought, people are interesting, people are fun. I could learn from other people. I really like learning from other people that have, especially skill sets that I don't have. Honestly, I think people that are interested and passionate about anything, even if it's something completely out of my wheelhouse, are fascinating. Um, and that was, kind of there from the beginning for me. Very much my grandparents' personality, very much my, parents' personality, as well, has brought that to me. And it's been a personality and a skill set, communicating and creating relationships that has served me really well as an entrepreneur. I think it's an incredibly important one, as an entrepreneur, to be able to communicate well, to be able to sell not just yourself, but, your product obviously as well. And for a lot of people that comes naturally. For others, that takes practice, and that takes repetition, and that takes experiencing, good interactions and tough ones as well. So even if that doesn't come naturally to you, there's a way to get it. Part of the muscle memory as well.
True, true. I mean, like I've also been kind of that guy where I'm just like outgoing. I like to talk with other people. Just I feel like you gain a lot of skills from it, and it just overall makes you a lot more confident. And it correlates to your professional life, to your personal life, to your relationships, anything. So I really do think talking with other people is very important. But going off of like the friends part, when you were building your businesses or when you were building yourself up, have you lost friends along the way, or have you had friends that were possibly like fake?
Mhm. I don't think I lost friends. I think I certainly had friends that kind of didn't really get it. You know, why is Tay spending so much time on this? Um, and that again didn't like lose the friendship. It just kind of like it just kind of reprioritized. Kind of the give and take in that friendship, I guess. Um, and but you know what, like the polar opposite effect happens as well, where people gravitate towards someone who's so intensely invested in bringing something to life. um, and that certainly happened at the university as well. One of my best friends that I met at university, my best friend to this day, the best man at my wedding, was someone who saw me building a recording studio in my dorm room and was like, what are you doing, man? Why are you doing this? And he became a massive champion like of me and for me, and I really always appreciated his support and his belief that Tage spending so much time doing music was that pursuit was worthwhile. And so for any friendship that faded away, new ones emerged because of that passion. And I think that's important to see. At the end of the day too, I think it's important not to see those friendships that maybe fade as like you know to not be resentful for that, to not be, petty about that either. In my mind, none of that's, too serious. Everyone has competing, realities and competing, priorities, especially in university. That, hey man, you do you, I'm gonna do me.
Exactly.
People, people kind of ebb and flow with.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, even if you do kind of drift apart, if it does happen, right? I think it's more so of a learning lesson, right? Like, regardless, you're still learning from the other person. This person taught you this, right? This person taught you how to do this. And what can you do after that, right? So,
For sure. And I'm sorry, on your note of
mhm,
because you mentioned, fake friends too, and I think that can be something that comes up a lot, in student environments and stuff
yes.
like that. It's really easy to have people latching on to the, big personality or the student venture that's, got the momentum. They're like, hey man, let me get a piece of that. Like
Mhm,
that definitely happens. And I think it's important to kind of develop a radar for that, really early.
mhm.
Um, but I think is an important kind of leadership trait around that is also to go back to what I said around not being resentful about that or petty
Yeah,
about that. It's gonna happen. You can call it out and you can ignore it. And at the end of the day, like your actions really matter as a leader in that circumstance. Because that's something that's like never gonna go away. That specifically kind of in the music industry and experience that I had, like music industry is one of the most fake places
mm,
that exists. Anything around entertainment honestly has a lot of that happens. And so developing that skill set kind of early and frequently for me was really helpful. But it was, I think, an important lesson that I learned, because there was a part of time where I didn't do this, was not to expend energy on combating that and to expend energy being negative about that. It's, you move forward, your head's in the right place. There's isn't, move on with that,
exactly, exactly. Actually, yes, literally, like, I've had a fake friend, right? Like, that person, I told him everything. I trusted him with a lot of information about me. And I learned that not everybody will be your closest friend. Not everybody will be buddy buddy with you, right? Some people, because for me, right, I tell my friends the harsh truth. I'm like, yo, I don't think what you did here was right. I feel like you could go about it in a better way. And the person didn't like that, right? And it's okay. I realize not everybody you can trust, not everybody you can be straightforward with. Just move on. Just move on to better things. right?
Yeah, there's a lot that you can spend your energy on,
Hmm.
and that really matters. I've always been a big believer in expending your energy on positive things,
Hmm.
more than the negative ones as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's the best part. And you were talking about the music industry where there's a lot of fake people. Like, can you expand more on that? Why do you say that?
Yeah. So one thing that was interesting, that was a big difference between kind of the music industry and the beer industry, for the second kind of half of my career, and actually a big reason for my kind of transition from one to the other is that in music, the people that I was working with and the environments that I was in, um, the world and the money that ran the world that I was running in was seen as a finite size. To use the analogy of the pie, like the pie is a singular size that does not change. And if you eat that slice of pie, I can't eat pie. And so there was always, the competition and the realization that if I don't get this deal, that person will. If I don't, book this artist, it's they're going to book somewhere else. If I don't sign this band, they're going to sign somewhere else. And, like, obviously that statement is true. If I don't sign them, someone else will. But there's other artists, there's other bands, there's other venues. It's like, but that mentality, is is really kind of concrete in the industry, unfortunately. And so I found myself in so many instances, like walking into a room and essentially kind of having to think about, uh, who in here do I need to kill before they kill me? What in here do I need to eat before someone else eats it? And that mentality, um, can serve you well in terms of making money, in terms of closing deals and those kinds of things. But it's not a very healthy mentality. It's not a very sustainable mentality either, from a relationship standpoint. Um, and I found that over time, like, really exhausting, and really kind of the antithesis of what I learned entrepreneurship to be, from my grandparents. Um, and so, when I was looking at exiting the music industry, I kind of, and what I wanted to do next was, I wanted to be in industry and in an environment where that wasn't the predominant mentality, where, the industry was growing. And so the industry was supporting each other. Your neighbor wasn't looking at your customer and saying, that's my customer, not yours. It's, in the craft beer industry, in the mid 2010s, was exploding in a way that there really was the predominant attitude of high tide floats all boats. We want more people coming into our industry so we can all have more customers, and we know our customers aren't loyal, so we're going to share them. But how do we make them great customers, and how do we get those customers to tell their friends, to bring them into what we're building? And I saw that mentality. Yeah, so when I came back to Toronto, I worked at a brewery in Toronto to kind of, like, learn the industry from from within it, in more of an in-depth way, and I really saw it in practice there. And when I came to Hamilton, we were the second brewery in the city to open up. Collective Arts had opened up a few years prior, and the support that Collective Arts, immediately offered, hey, I heard you're opening a brewery. What do you need? How can we help? Was the incredible validation of that being the attitude, and that being the way that craft brewers work together, and that collaboration and that cooperation was and is still persistent to this day. Now there's 9 breweries in Hamilton, and we all know each other. I know the owners and the staff of all of them. We lend each other ingredients. We've gotten calls from Fairweather saying, "Hey, we need these mosaic hops, and our order didn't show up. Do you guys have any we could borrow? And we'll get you back." And it's like, yeah, of course. For us, our yeast didn't, at a certain viability. Clifford, can we come pick up some yeast? And they're like, yeah, come over. Collective Arts lets us use their labs for free, equipment that we don't have that they do because they're a bigger brewery. So there's this incredible, cooperation with, within the industry that really was the antithesis of, a lot of what I experienced in music. That was really refreshing, and as honestly, I mentioned, wanting to expend energy on positive things. Like a big part of learning that for me was, some of those experiences in music that, and experiencing the opposite in beer, where hey, like we can all be successful, we can all grow our businesses, we can all accomplish the goals that we have. We don't need to do it by stabbing each other in the back, by pushing, another person out of the way to get to that customer, for example.
Yeah, fair enough. But I have this like, okay, going back to like the competition part where, okay, this person, I have to eat this slice of pie before this person eats it. I kind of have that little competitive mentality, right? And it's like, yes, everybody should try to win. And that is kind of like an exhausting mentality. But don't you think sometimes you do need that mentality? Like, I understand you said to make money, yeah, sometimes it's fine, but in the long term, it's kind of like exhausting. But don't you think you're gonna need that mentality for a long term if you want to win in some parts of your life?
Okay, yeah. So maybe worth kind of separating how you work with your peers versus how you drive your business.
Hmm.
You still, as an operator, as an entrepreneur, I still was incredibly competitive.
Hmm.
If I knew that we were trying to get our beer on tap at this restaurant, and Clifford got it on tap instead, or Fairweather got it on instead, I wasn't like, oh, I'm so happy for you. That's really cool. you know, I still looked at that as like, well, we didn't get that. Okay, like, what are we going to do next? How are we going to approach? Again, that's a failure, a small failure. What are we going to do differently? Why did we lose it? How are we going to do it? How are we going to make sure that doesn't happen again, or happens as infrequently as possible? And then I got out and worked twice as hard the next day to make sure I got a tap, as well. So, yeah, so you can have that competitive mindset while still being a collaborative person, while still being helpful to your competition. Those other breweries, all eight of them, are our competition. We know that. In fact, there's 350 other breweries in the province that are also our competition, because we're all trying to sell into the LCBO. We're all trying to sell into the same bars and restaurants. We want you to order our beer online instead of someone else's. Um, and so we need to approach our operations in that way when it comes to you know supporting someone, being able to you know again make a beer because they need certain hops or certain yeast or whatever. We don't look at that in the short term, with a short term mentality that, say, existed a lot more in the music industry. It was like, no, I actually actively want to sabotage that person, from being able to even produce a product. I think that's the difference. Um,
I see.
it's more of a long term, collaborative approach. While short term, we can still be competitive. We can still be going after the same customers and some of the same streams of revenue. Um, I think it's more of a wraparound kind of mindset to it.
I see. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. I mean, I do think like it does get exhausting at some point where you're always like, okay, I can't let this person win. I have to get this product. I have to get this thing always, right? I do think at some point you got to realize there are other ways to go about it, right? It doesn't always have to be where I have to take this person, I have to take that client, right? If that person gets it, that's fine, right? So, talking about the brewing business, I know that it's an award-winning brand in downtown Hamilton and over nearly a decade. But I know that nobody just has a smooth run in it, right? Like, what was that hardest moment when you were building it up? Like the one where it's just like, and what was that one part where when you were building up, like, this might actually be the one?
Well, I'll kind of have there's two, like, kind of big moments and two big hurdles that we had pretty early on. One of them was before we opened, one of them was kind of shortly after. So the one before we opened was actually even just being able to build our brewery where we built it. So we're on James Street North, downtown Hamilton.
Oh, I went there.
You-
I went there the other day with Veer and the other guys. We ate some food there. Yeah.
Enjoyed it. Um, so we're right in smack in the middle of the city on a commercial, street. Um, Before we opened up, the city of Hamilton's zoning bylaws, which mandate, what types of businesses can go where within the city, did not allow for a brewery to open up on a commercial corridor. Any commercial corridor. It said that breweries can only exist in manufacturing zones, which are they're far removed from the core of the city. They're on Burlington Street. They're in the east end of Hamilton. They're in specific pockets that don't have foot traffic, that don't have other small businesses surrounding them. And so, what we proposed to do, the model of our business was, if you went to City Hall and handed your paperwork to a clerk, it was just a stamp no right away. Um, I didn't accept that. I, looked at Hamilton and said, the city of Hamilton is actually wrong about this. There are other cities around the world, plenty of them now, that actually approach the way that breweries can exist as part of the fabric of the city in a way that is, that takes care of the concerns of the city around breweries, noise, traffic around deliveries, um, smells and wastewater and all, and the electricity usage and all that stuff like that. The reasons on paper why breweries are banished to the industrial zones. um, but there are municipalities that have approached the size and scale of the brewery that we wanted to launch, in a way that took care of those concerns and still had it as part of a commercial district. And so I had to do a couple things. I had to, one, do my homework. Get information. As I mentioned, is incredibly important to me always. So I went and I did the research for Chat GPT around, hey, what are other municipalities doing? I'm going to look at cities that are similarly sized to Hamilton. We look at Pittsburgh, which is a mirror city to Hamilton in so many ways. I'm going to look at Asheville, North Carolina. I'm going to look at San Diego. I'm going to look at Portland, Oregon, and other cities like that. And I'm going to look at what they did to encourage breweries to open up on commercial corridors. I'm not just going to look at their zoning laws. I'm going to look at the economic impact those breweries had. I'm going to look at how many jobs were created. I'm going to look at how many businesses opened up around those breweries after they opened because all of a sudden this brewery had foot traffic. And I'm going to bring the city that information. And I'm not going to bring it to the clerk because the clerk doesn't care. The clerk's job is to say this, this checks this box. So yes, this doesn't check this box. So no. I'm going to bring it to the mayor. I'm going to bring it to the economic development department, who's responsible for numbers that like the ones that I'm finding. I'm going to bring it to our city councilors, and I'm going to build a case with them. And if I do my job well enough, as the founder, I'm going to be able to convince them that this is a good idea. And that took about a year. I
Damn.
spent a year working with city councilors and the mayor and our director of economic development and our director of planning, who's responsible for the zoning bylaws. I delegated in front of City Hall and City Council multiple times, not just around issues that were related to the brewery zoning, but around zoning as a whole. I had to inform myself about what planning a city looked like, it felt like, and I made myself present and a thought leader around what we were doing being a net benefit to the city, not just to me. And over the course of a year, we were able to have those conversations, and a city council, and two city councilors proposed a motion that would include breweries in as a new use in commercial districts in the city of Hamilton as part of a new downtown secondary plan that had been proposed. And that vote passed. I had to delegate and speak at that city council meeting, and all of a sudden, we were allowed to actually do what we were wanting to do. Now, all the while, I'm planning and for my brewery to exist. I didn't wait for that vote to happen to start planning. I had to plan along the way, full well knowing that there's a chance that this would not happen. So I had to take that risk, that all this work could be for nothing. But I also had to, I had enough confidence in myself and the progress we were making within city council to say, um, that I think we can make this happen. So that was the first big, hurdle, first big challenge that we were able to mitigate. The second one, which is kind of the obvious one, was COVID.
Oh yeah.
COVID came 2.5 years, 3 years after we opened the business. And the way that our business was set up, our business model was based out of our tap room. The four walls that you saw the other day, like 99% of our business was within those four walls. And we were like wildly busy from the day we opened our brewery. Things were going really, really well, and that model helped us capture the highest margin possible on the beer we were selling, and so everything was singing. COVID took that business model and burned it. Uh, we all of a sudden couldn't open those four walls and the doors to those four walls, so we had to actually completely change our business. We had to go back to the drawing board about how we, like making the beer was fine, but getting it to our customers, that had to start from scratch. And that period, the 2 year stretch that kind of really consumed COVID and all the kind of changing, rules and regulations around distancing and, and being in public spaces and stuff like that was the most challenging 2 years of my life. And I use challenging as both a positive and a negative word. It was exhausting. It was 100 hours a week, every week. It was looking at, wearing 10 hats a day, from delivering beer in a van to, making sure the operations were running, to helping bottle beer, to, cooking food, to like literally doing everything. But it was also the most like challenging and like the stimulating way. It like forced me as an entrepreneur to really, flex muscles that I'd never flexed before. It forced me to, be, more not just more creative, but more thoughtful and more purposeful about everything we did, because every month felt, do or die, right? And every month also was its own version of reality, because things change so frequently as well. So yeah, those two moments stick out for me is like the big hurdles, but also, as a result, even more satisfying, results because of that as well.
Wow. That's actually crazy. So you started this back in 2019, 2018, was it?
The brewery opened in beginning of 2017.
It started in the beginning of 2017, and then 2020 was the biggest hurdle. It was COVID. Yeah, I think that was screwed like a lot of business owners over.
It screwed the business owners over. Our industry,
Yeah,
the brewing industry, and the hospitality industry was devastated because of.
yeah.
We lost about 10% of the breweries in the
Oh
province
my
in the course of that
gosh.
period.
Yeah.
So we went from like 420 breweries to 380 or something like
Hmm.
that. Restaurants, which always have survived on razor thin margins, were disappearing at a
Hmm.
rate unseen before. Small businesses and downtowns were kind of carved out and hollowed out, and that well, I know why. I saw it. It
Yeah.
wasn't, and we lived it. We weren't, as profitable during those years as we
Hmm.
were before. But what we did and what we wanted to make sure we were able to do was to make sure that when we got to return to normal, we were better off. And
Hmm.
what we were building in those moments of pivoting and in those moments of challenge could actually contribute to the overall success of the business when we got to have our normal business back to.
I see. Well, was there like ever a moment in that like COVID part where your entire business was just like, okay, this might actually like be the end of us? And how did you overcome that?
I don't think we ever thought like this would be the end of us.
Hmm.
We had a really successful few years before that, so we had money in the bank. If anything, it was more of like the personal mental challenge, I think,
Mm,
for not just myself, for our team. It was
I
actually
see.
more about sustaining our mental livelihoods than more than anything else. And that wasn't just around how much we were working and stuff like that. For me, like one of the most difficult things was letting staff go. I mean, we did it for purposeful and staff supported reasons, but when the first shutdown happened, March 16th, 2020, we had 27 staff, and I wrote 24 letters of termination,
Oh.
of layoffs.
Mhm.
But we did that communicating to our staff that, like, obviously we want you back. We're doing this so you can start getting the eye right now. If we wait and we say, oh, we'll see, maybe we'll keep you on the schedule, we don't know, but we'll keep you employed, that could actually have a negative impact on our staff. So we laid off every staff member except for two plus myself, our brewer and our chef and me, um, to give our staff that, ability to access that EI funding that they could get. But like that took a mental toll. That was like, I know that was a net positive thing for our staff members. And when we were able to, we hired them back, but still doesn't feel good. Still didn't like feel like, what I signed up for as an entrepreneur. That was devastating. And that made me question, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Why I don't want to do this. Is it easier just to say, and there was a moment like really early on that we're like, maybe we just close and like not close the business, but just stay closed and ride this out. And like, you know, hey, everyone take a little vacation. Now that was the thinking if this was going to be a month or 2 month thing, and obviously it turned into 2 years. So that wasn't even really a sustainable and a practical thought. But no, those kinds of decisions and that kind of um, you know mental impact was the most difficult thing about that period. It wasn't. I never really worried for the health of the business. It was more about.
It was more about the other people you were looking out for. Yeah, I think that's admirable. It's always about looking out for the other people, and I think that's the same thing that my dad always does too in the business. It's not about sustaining it, right? Yes, it is about sustaining it, but it's more so about how the people survive, how the employees survive, right? Because we want to make sure we have the best for going for them, right? And I think that goes
For
for
sure.
anything.
Being an entrepreneur, being an employer is an incredible responsibility.
Hmm.
It's a really important responsibility. It's one that sometimes people take really lightly. And I think that's actually something we could talk more about. As a school that is teaching students to be entrepreneurial is
Hmm.
the responsibility of being an employer, responsibility to create about creating jobs, and I think that's one of the most valuable things that I've ever learned is what that like really means and what that really feels and what that responsibility shifts in how you are as a leader as well.
Hmm. Absolutely. I know that we're running out of time. I'm just gonna ask you two more questions. One of the main questions is a lot of people they think grades is the main thing that will get them jobs or that will help them go more into their entrepreneurial journey. And what do you say about that? How do you think where a lot of parents or a lot of people they say grades are they mean everything? How do you go about that?
Yeah, I was a B-minus student,
Mhm.
um, which isn't something I brag about.
Yeah.
Actually, if I was an A student, um, but the reality was for me, I spent a lot of time working on my business. I did what I needed to do to get by in school. Um, but I think there's a lot more than just a grade that you can take out of university, and I think it's the experiences that you give yourself. It's um, it's the soft skill development that sometimes doesn't show up on a report card or a transcript, that I think as entrepreneurs you really have to think about and put yourself in the position to gain experience and develop skills in those areas. I see you're doing that, fantastically. I think the easy thing that the business school talks about is networking. Networking isn't just about like, shaking a hand and getting a business card, connecting on LinkedIn that maybe that person will hire you one day. It's the skill of communicating. It is the skill of, being able to, find, value that you can create for someone. That's what, networking really is. And spending your time as a student building those things alongside of at least a passable transcript, I think is really important. Some parents are going to understand that, some aren't. That's thankfully, and luckily for me, you know, I had parents that saw the kind of the whole of what I was learning, from university. And I think it's important if your parents have, really high expectations for grades, just to show them the whole of what you're learning,
Mhm.
to show them if you're an entrepreneur and you're being entrepreneurial, to show them what you're building, not just the good parts, but the messy parts too.
Mhm.
Here's what I learned. This didn't work out actually. And I actually, from your perspective, I might have wasted time doing this, but here's what I learned from it. I think that's like, if you can prove that now as a parent myself, like if, if my, kid had that approach to not meeting expectations of a grade level, I think, yeah, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, true. I mean, hopefully my parents will understand. Right? But yeah, absolutely. I think it's mainly about networking. With the amount of interviews I've gotten, like, look, I don't have the best of grades, right? I think I have decent grades. I literally, with the amount of interviewing and interviews I've gotten, the amount of people that I've met is all through networking and actually talking with them, not trying to get something like, oh, can I get a job referral or can I get this, right? It's more about learning from them. And I that's what's really benefited me the most, just really being a sponge, absorbing all the knowledge you can, actually learning about how they got to their position rather than asking, can I get a referral? Right?
That's got to be the approach, man.
Mhm.
You have to take all those conversations as a learning experience, and eventually, build skills and networks yourself to actually be able to add value back. If you meet someone from XYZ big company, and they're telling you about what they're working on and a big challenge they're facing, you're like, I actually had another conversation with someone else in your network, and I think maybe they would be good to connect you to.
Mhm.
If you're a 20-year old connecting to 35, 45-year-olds, like then they actually create opportunity together, like you help facilitate that. Like,
Mhm.
that's something that doesn't actually require deep expertise
Yeah.
from you, that you
Yeah.
don't have. It actually uses the skill of networking to help bring value to that conversation.
Exactly. Exactly. One last question I want to ask you. I ask this to everybody. What is your meaning of life?
Mm. Wow, just a simple one, huh? um I learned from my grandparents that entrepreneurship can create opportunity for other people, not just yourself, Um, and I've really taken that to heart. I've tried to evolve that, over the course of my life. I've tried to really ingrain that further and further into what I do. Um, s- so much so that I take that out of entrepreneurship now as well. Just as a human being, as a dad, as a community member, what am I doing to lift other people up? What am I doing to provide opportunity? I'm very lucky and very blessed to be in a position where I don't have to exclusively look after myself. And entrepreneurship has given me that privilege. So using that place and using my skills, using my networks to find opportunity for other people is what I want to spend my time doing. It's the reason I'm back at the group, right? To really bring it full circle. The reason that I'm working with students like yourself and your peers is because I want to see you do great things. Um, and what I really want is, for you to do great things and then repeat that cycle, so that you can lift other people up. And I think that ripple is really powerful. I think that impact can be multiplied in a way that is so much deeper than a single person making an effort. If you are able to impact someone else and lift that person up, for them to do the same means that you've lifted up thousands of people all of a sudden.
Absolutely. I fully agree with you there. Like, and I fully respect you doing this, right? Like, I've seen you help multiple students out, whether that may be with their clubs or even just helping them out randomly, right? Just even having meetings with them and talking with other people. I think that's one of the most admirable things you could do. And that, like, even inspires me to do even more, right? Kind of just give back to other people rather than keeping it to yourself, right? And one, like, really, I really appreciate you for even taking your time out of your day, right? I know that you're busy, you're a family man, and even doing this interview with me. I know this is going to help a bunch of students, even adults or whoever that may be watching this. It's going to be beneficial for them in any sort of way.
Thank you so much, man. I'm really grateful to have this conversation, and grateful to be in a position where we can together through this conversation today. Hopefully, inspire someone else. And I'll put the plug and the offer out there. If you're a student listening and you want to connect, feel free to reach out to me. I am here and in this role to do exactly that. And appreciate what you're doing in this ecosystem. The things that students like yourself are driving and creating will create opportunity for other students.
Awesome. Thank you very much once again, Tej, for coming on. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Of course, yeah, you too.
Awesome.